Now to introduce today's Fireside Chat is Mike Onders, Chief Data Officer of KeyBank.
I'm proud and excited to be here representing KeyBank, one of the two platinum sponsors here, and excited that you guys are all here. Before I introduce our next two panelists, I wanted to say two things. First, I should have asked Bernie Marino for a Baker Mayfield jersey before I did this. Second, a short story. On Sunday night, if you were here Sunday, I'm a native Clevelander, and I've been here 30 years. And I was telling my wife, I said, she goes, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going downtown." She's like, "Why?" I go, "Well, there's a conference, there's a keynote, there's a networking reception." And it didn't click for her. And finally dawned on me. In 30 years of being in IT, and most of those years in Cleveland, I've never told my wife I was going to a tech conference in Cleveland. And it was the first time ever. So by show of hands, how many people, this is the first time you've ever been to a tech conference in Cleveland, which is awesome. And I hope it's not the last time, and I hope Bernie Marino and Destination Cleveland and all the civic leaders and corporations continue to sponsor this event so that everybody in Cleveland can say they attended a tech conference in Cleveland. And I bet Mark Hurd from Oracle never thought 4 months ago that he would be flying to Cleveland for a blockchain conference in December when it was snowing. But he did, and that's a tribute to everybody here. So let me introduce. Mark Hurd is the CEO of Oracle Corporation and a member of Oracle's Board of Directors. At Oracle Open World, an annual enterprise technology conference drawing over 60,000 attendees and millions of online viewers, Mark gives an annual keynote address and is known for his predictions on the future of enterprise cloud technology. He has been recognized for his business leadership by publications such as Fortune and the San Francisco Chronicle. Mark is also a published author, sharing his business acumen in his co-authored book, The Value Factor. As a graduate of Baylor University, Mark serves on the Baylor Board of Regents and is also an active supporter of the Intercollegiate Tennis Association and has been instrumental in the creation of the Oracle ITA Masters Tournament. Bill Blausey will be joining Mark at the chairs up here in the Fireside Chat. He's Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer for Eaton, a power management company headquartered here in Cleveland. In this role, Bill is responsible for the enterprise information technology strategy and execution. Bill assumed his current position in January 2006 after serving as Vice President Information Technology for Eaton's Fluid Power Group since 2001. He joined Aeroquip Vickers Inc. in 1986 as a programmer, so there's hope for you programmers, and then moved into positions of increasing responsibility in financial applications and manufacturing systems, including directing e-commerce initiatives for Aeroquip Vickers. Eaton acquired Aeroquip Vickers in 1999. Bill has served on several boards in Northeast Ohio region. He earned a bachelor's degree in computer science from Ohio's own Bowling Green State University. Please join me in welcoming Mark and Bill to the stage.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it. Hello, everybody. Mark, I have to ask you now, did you actually think you were going to be in Cleveland in December in the snow?
No, I consciously accepted this invitation. Yeah, so no, I was aware. I lived in Ohio for a while, for 17 years, so I knew what I was getting into. You knew what you were getting into? Yeah, no, I knew I was getting into. I left LA. I lived in the Silicon Valley, but I left LA yesterday. It was 71 degrees, and it's not here.
Yeah, it's not here, but it's still a beautiful place.
Beautiful place.
And we're
No,
super excited.
Too.
Yeah, we're super excited to have you here. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, no, my pleasure.
As Mike said, it's fantastic to have you to share your perspectives. So maybe just to start off, rather than dive right into the technologies and the particular area of blockchain or any of the technologies, maybe just share a little bit of your perspective about the economy and what's happening in business overall. And how do you feel about the state of affairs?
Well, I mean, I think it depends a little bit, Bill, on where you sit. I think if you're in the United States and you're a business that doesn't have a lot of global reach, I think the economy's pretty good. I mean, when you see GDP numbers that are, bordering on 4%, 3%, that means that we're growing. Obviously, we have, there used to be an old saying when you're in business school, if you had 4% unemployment, you were at full employment. And so I think there's a lot of of data that would say the economy in the U.S. is doing quite well. I think that changes a little bit depending where you go around the world. I think Western Europe probably going through some changes that are pretty significant right now. They don't have a lot of GDP growth. Some of that's done by the way they drive their economy. They want less risk. They want more consistency. So they've sort of restricted lending, and I think that's affected their economy, and it affects IT as well. But without going through all of across the whole world, I would say U.S. doing quite well. IT is going through a pretty dramatic change right now in that this will be the first year ever that consumer IT spending outpaces business IT. So I would guess that when the history books are written on 2018, you'll see consumer IT sort of in the $1.3 trillion range, $1.3 trillion and change, and you'll see business IT in the $1.2 trillion and change, which is from the days when consumer IT was a PC and you're in somebody's den with a modem and a printer. I mean, this has gone through an incredible explosion, and it makes it very hard, Bill, as you know, on businesses that are trying to deal with consumers. The level most business IT is 85% maintenance. Yep. And so the consumer is innovating at incredible speed. Businesses not so much.
And do you believe that the mix between business IT and consumer IT is impacting Oracle's strategy around all the different technologies? How do you feel that's really changing your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think our view at Oracle is that there has to be an interruption. The current model, forget Oracle for a second, but start with our customers, because there wouldn't be an Oracle without our customers. So our customers' businesses have to change. If you went back, and I don't want to take through a bit long history lesson, but if you went back into the late 80s, there was one company that dominated business IT, and that company was called IBM. And as you dial forward over 25 years, that's completely changed. As they've technically gone in a different direction. The Silicon Valley has built basically, I don't know how I describe it. All of you, when you grew up, played Legos, maybe to a degree, know what a red thing connects to a blue thing. That's sort of the way IT has evolved, right? IT has evolved into piece parts. There's now a company that makes microprocessors, a company that makes operating systems, et cetera. And customers have spent 25 years gluing this stuff together, in some cases with the help of systems integrators. And so now what you have in most of our customers are these very heterogeneous, tens and tens, if not hundreds of configurations, very old applications. And so this environment, Bill, the way I would describe it is not a sustainable environment from a business model perspective. If we want businesses to start innovating quickly, we've got to take all this tech debt that's evolved over the years, get it off the backs of the IT budget. And I think what you're seeing right now in IT is a transfer, or the attempted transfer of IT budgets to the R&D budgets of the industry, and that's evolved with this whole thing called the cloud, and getting more work done by others, less work done by you, and I think that shift is at the core of our strategy, which is rewriting all of our applications for the cloud, rewriting the next generation database that's frankly self-driving and autonomous, but all of those are technical initiatives. Our technical strategy really aligns to the fact that we believe the business model of IT has got to change.
Yeah, and I think it's a great point in that many of us are laden with legacy debt of applications. We heard about a COBOL application that was replaced yesterday, and we certainly at Eaton have many legacy applications as well, and trying to keep that balance between the old technologies and investing in the new. If you look at the new kind of wave of technologies, even beyond blockchain or inclusive of blockchain, which ones do you think are the most disruptive at this point? How do you think about the overall technology landscape?
Well, let me be careful with the word technology. I think, first of all, as a business model, this movement to the cloud, while I don't call cloud an individual technology, as a strategy, I think this is an irresistible force. I think when you look at the introduction was some predictions that I traditionally make. I'll predict for you that by the time you get to the early part of the next decade, there'll be almost no data centers owned by a company. The data centers, 15% of U.S. data centers, by the way, owned by corporations, will go away this year. that applications, as we know it today, the average application, your point about the COBOL application, the average application in this country in the Fortune 1000 averages about 22, 23 years old. So you think about that fact just in isolation. Subtract 22 or 23 from 2018, and you get something built in the late 90s. This was built pre-internet, pre-mobile, prehistoric. I mean, it's all that none of this stuff is built. And so the thought that you've got to sit there, Bill, and modernize a 23, you sit there with a CEO that says, hey, how come this stuff doesn't do this? Well, it's really old. And it was written in stuff that doesn't really work anymore. In fact, the people that wrote it are no longer with the company. Some may not even be on the planet anymore.
That never happens.
Well, it's unfortunately, it's the typical story. And so as a result, I think this ability now to move applications to either a commercial SaaS provider or some type, this is just not going to stop. And so now I think within that are a series of technologies, the way you laid it out, that I think will be features of all that. I think blockchain's one of them. I think whether you're talking about machine learning, whether you're talking about artificial intelligence, whether you're talking about blockchain, these are all features and characteristics of go-forward applications as we move forward.
I think it's an interesting point in that how we continue to move forward away from our legacy and balance the investments is a continued struggle that we have. How do you see building some of these more advanced technologies into your applications or into your new cloud applications? What is Oracle's strategy around that, and how do you see it evolving?
Well, I mean, to your point, I think that our applications will change. If you ask me for big changes that are coming in applications, first, I think will be the user interface. I don't think it'll be long before people are looking back on all of us putting our fingers on pieces of glass and wondering just exactly what we were doing. And I think all of this will move to voice interface. I think you'll be able now to integrate voice activity directly into core applications. Like it won't be in our next release of our applications. You'd be able to go to lunch today, business lunch. Maybe you were going to expense it. You'd be able to take a snapshot on your phone of the receipt, voice activate that into your expense statement, and you'd be done. You'd get an authentication that that receipt was okay, that it was accepted, and boom, you're done. So you will wind up with, lots of capabilities. That would all be driven by AI and if you get problems, you're going to have voice-activated digital assistants that will guide you through these applications. So these will all not really become their individual applications. I do not believe AI will be a quote-unquote application. I believe it will be a capability integrated into all applications. I believe chatbots, digital assistants, again, there won't be a chatbot application. There will be chatbots integrated into all of these applications. I also wouldn't want you to take away that I think this is going to disintermediate tons of jobs. I believe actually most of the jobs in IT, if you dial forward into the next decade, most of the jobs in IT haven't been created yet. That all of these new technologies actually create new jobs. So somebody's going to have to manage the chatbots. There will be jobs for chatbot managers. And those haven't been created yet, but somebody's going to have to manage it. AI is going to be a great technology. What it does is, though, brings together for you incredible amounts of history. That doesn't make history, doesn't always tell you the right decision to make for the future. So there's still going to have to be human intervention, human management, human leadership, and in the end, I think it will create more jobs than it actually replaces, but those will be different jobs.
Great, thank you. Over the last couple days, we've talked a lot about how you incorporate blockchain into networks and bringing parties together through consortiums, through a supply chain. Typically a supply chain or a set of information that's shared across these boundaries of companies, organizations. Do you see that technology and blockchain fitting into the Oracle technologies and then operating in that supply chain as well? How do you see that coming together?
Well, I think of blockchain as two separate opportunities. And again, I think of it at its core, similar to what I described with other things, as a feature of core applications as opposed to a standalone application. I think there will be value in the creation of blockchain networks. In addition, I think you'll see blockchain features integrated into core applications like supply chain applications. As an example, track and trace is one of the key applications in anybody who's got a supply chain. I mean, you get something, I agree with you to ship me something. I'd like to know when you shipped it. I'd like to know you shipped it through an authenticated shipper. I'd like to know I received it. By the way, I'd also like to know it's not counterfeit. I'd like to be able to authenticate that transaction. That will have to become a feature of a core supply chain app as opposed to a standalone app. Now, the network that transaction gets routed across can be a differentiated network. I think you'll see, our imaginations or the use cases. I mean, I think you'll see the same thing in take a different application like recruiting. I think there'll be a lot of demand for the fact that as a student, you've got a transcript and a resume. You want to transmit that off for a secure network, and you want to pass that along to a potential hirer. Well, I have to have the ability to receive that in my recruiting application, so that's got to become a feature of my HR application. Now, I think it's very likely that you'll see a network that will actually support that across higher ed to potential hirers. So I think the creation of the network is one dimension. The feature set that exists in the apps is yet another dimension.
So this integration between kind of the core applications that we run, for instance, at Eaton and other large organizations and tying into these networks are something you're thinking about building into your products or building?
Not thinking will. So we have two separate. If you look at blockchain for us, we have two separate initiatives. We have an infrastructure application that would allow you to write your blockchain technology. At the same time, so if you wanted to build a blockchain network, you wanted to build a blockchain feature set, simultaneous with those feature sets getting integrated into those core applications that you're describing. By the way, you have great applications at Eaton. Very good. How did you get here today, Bill?
It's a good question. Yeah. Mark and I had a funny chat as we were preparing or spending some time together this morning talking about this session, and the reality is I'm the second string. That's what it amounts to.
That's not true.
I told Mark I was the second string because Amy Brady from Key Bank was supposed to be the interviewer, and she's at an Oracle event. I think she made this up on the fly, by the way. She's at an Oracle event in India today, so I am the stand-in. So he reminded me of that as well.
I've heard this now. Yeah, so Amy invited me. And said it would be great if you came to Cleveland in December. I'd like you to come here. And I said, well, it's not the first place I was thinking of going, but given the kind invitation, I'll be glad to consider it. And she said, well, I'll be up there with you. And I said, that's great. And then Amy and I were at an event in June or July, and she said, that event in Cleveland that you're coming to, I'll actually miss that event because I'm going to be at an Oracle event in India. And I was trying to explain to her I could rearrange the Oracle India event if she'd like.
Yeah.
And she said, no, it's really important. No. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. So let me make sure I got this straight. I'm going to be in Cleveland. I'm now doing an individual session. She goes, no. And so it's great you could come.
So now after we've been up here 15 minutes, you're really probably wishing you would have rescheduled that event.
No, it's great. It's great to be here.
Hey, maybe one other question around how companies think about, again, whether it's blockchain or any new technology. What's your kind of advice, or what should a CEO or any executive be thinking about? What's your advice to them about understanding the landscape and how to move their organizations forward, given what you said earlier with many of the legacy issues that many organizations struggle with today?
Well, I'm very sympathetic to CEOs in general. I mean, I think as a group, they've got enormous if you don't know CEOs, 40% of them don't last 18 months in their job. So the average CEO now lasts a little over 4 years in their job. So, and I don't know whether that's cumulative or just in one assignment, but I've been on borrowed time for a long time in these jobs. And the reason is, in most cases, because the job gets on top of the CEO before the CEO can get on top of the job and control the company. And so I think any of these decisions, you can't lead with the technology. Yeah. You have to lead with the way companies work. Is companies have a strategy. Companies have, in the end, the business model to execute the strategy, processes to basically get the business model to work, and the applications automate the processes, and then the features of the application have to enhance the processes. And so the way I would think about any of these would be, using the example of blockchain, would it actually help my business? Do in the end I become more efficient? Do I have lower expenses? Do I have higher throughput? Do I decrease my cycle time? Does it put me in a better position to grow revenue? So fraud, I mean, I'll face it, in retailers, many companies, fraud can be a relatively large expense in many companies. If I can use blockchain to reduce my shrinkage, to reduce my fraud, that can put money on my bottom line. So if I can come up with ROIs, and I think applications in the end do come down to returns on investment. Your point, if I'm going to invest in these new cloud technologies, well, I think inherent in your point was cash flow wise, I've got an existing environment to run. Right. I want to get this new stuff. How do I do both these things at the same time? Now, we have to be capable of helping you do that, but there's got to be features in these capabilities that tell the CEO, when you go asking for approval, that he's got to say, why does this help my business perform better? Am I going to grow my revenue faster, improve my gross margins, or am I going to decrease my expenses? And if you can't answer one of those questions, you probably get thrown out of the room.
Yeah. I mean, it's a very good point, is that we're clearly trying to balance the two. And you named some of the use cases that are applicable in a company like Eaton: counterfeits, fraud, warranty, recalls. All of those are very good types of applications that may make sense in our organization, but they have to pay back, and we have to be able to make the investment, and ideally it's with partners that have capabilities and applications that we can leverage across the network. So they do have to make sense from a business model perspective.
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you a simple one. When I was CEO of HP, we had a big printing business.
Yep.
And ink was a big part of our supply chain. Printing ink. Our biggest problem was fraud. People that would actually steal various parts of ink and replace it with fake ink. And you'd actually see fake ink show up to many of our customers, dealers particularly. The ability for you to now authenticate that you got real ink, as opposed, I mean, let me give you an example. You would find somebody who would rob a truck, take real boxes, take real cartridges, empty out half the ink, put water in the other half, and then replace anyway, and get double the supply, and it was all fake, and then in the end hurt our brand. If in the end you could now authenticate that what I got on the other end, even for, in our case, of a $25 billion business that had 5-6% shrinkage, wouldn't take long to say, I can save $1 billion through an application feature set that would authenticate what you ordered is what you got. That use case is relatively simple in terms of saying, would I buy that? You wouldn't have to pitch that to me very long for me to say, yeah, let's do that.
Yep.
Can we do it in the morning? Because if we can, it's going to be extremely accretive. And I think you can use that use case with almost, I'll give you another example. I'm sure this never happens in any of your companies, but we actually get resumes from people that apply for jobs who, I know you're going to find this shocking, but actually lie. So they say, we got a degree from Baylor, is the guy who introduced me. And the truth is, yeah, you might have gone there, but you didn't actually get a degree. And by the way, it takes us a long time to vet that out, right? And you can argue whether that's a good policy or not, that you actually have to have a degree. But we actually believe that what you say is important, because actually the most important thing is whether you agree, but the fact you lied to us about whether you got it or not. The fact that I can authenticate that what you said on that application is true is a really big deal, and vets out a whole bunch of overhead and administrative work that we today have to do. If I can offload that, automate that, then that's another use case that I'm probably going to nod my head when you come into my office and say, how about this? And I'm probably like, yeah, okay, let's do that.
Those are great examples. They really are. Since you brought up education, I want to shift gears a little bit, because you and I were talking about this earlier with regards to Oracle's strategy about your development hubs, or these hubs of innovation. Tell me a little bit about that and how you're building those hubs and where you're putting them in the world today and how you think about it.
Sure. So we have 145,000 people in our company. We have a big strategy to hire from the college campus. It was a decision that I made 6 or 7 years ago that really a lot of our industry was mercenary hiring. Companies trade people, et cetera. And we went back to going back to the college campus and hiring. And so our view was to put hubs around the world. In this country, we have several hubs. We actually have 4 of them now. And outside of our headquarters, where we recruit from schools, and we have both development and sales hubs, and they're co-located. And so our strategy has been to get the best young people from the best schools, put them in the best facilities with the best tools, selling the best products, hopefully led by the best management, give them the best training.
Yeah. I may be leading the witness here, but tell me, what are the attributes you look for in where you place your hubs? What is it about the region, the cities, the place where you've decided to put them? That
nice weather's the number one
okay.
model. So
I should have known that one was coming.
Good weather, it's really a good place. So we go. So we only recruit. May sound terrible, but we recruit from about a little over 30 schools. The reason we only recruit for 30-some schools is we try to get to know the schools. We try to get to know the professors. We try to get to know the people in placement. And we try to get a viral effect in the school from the people that we hire with each class that we bring in. And as I said, in the U.S. alone, I bet this year we'll bring in 2,300 kids off the college campus. We then put them through a very discrete training program to orient them to Oracle. It's very important for us to recruit the right person. So we actually use machine learning, AI, in our HR application to try to look for the attributes of what would be the commonality between why people are here. Is it unique to the school? Is it unique to the major, to the GPA, to extracurricular activities, to the training they had, to the manager they have, et cetera, et cetera. And then we put them in hubs, and hubs we typically bring into places that are close to strong educational institutions that have good partnership with government, which is usually a big asset to us. Incentives to get started, because we're like you. We don't, as we're building a facility, we don't want to have 2 costs at the same time. So the opportunity to have good partnership with governments and schools is probably the 2 biggest characteristics that drive the location of our hubs.
So do we think we have that here? Great schools, great companies, and our government aligned. We need to talk Mark into looking here, is what I'm saying. That's one of the things. We can't do anything about the weather.
No, that it is what it is. But the thing we do is we don't do what, to be very blunt, we don't do what Amazon did, and we don't have an auction for where we go.
Right.
So, we try very hard to do the work and think about what will be best for us. We've put a lot of money into our facility in Austin, Texas, which is not the Silicon Valley. We've put a lot of money into our facility in LA. We've done the same thing in Boston, and we are looking for a 4th location now, and we'll look. But I won't pre-tip what we're looking at. So.
Thanks for sharing that. It is great to hear your approach and how you're really driving that through the colleges and building talent in that fashion. It's super to hear, and it's certainly, we're always interested in attracting you here.
You get great schools here.
We do. We have fantastic schools.
We recruit. I remember from when I lived in Ohio that, and the time when I was here, the governor was Bob Taft, and I remember talking to Bob about how Ohio had tremendous talent, but the young kids that were going to school here wanted to leave to find opportunities for other jobs. And that's really the key to, Ohio's, we were looking up today, the GDP of Ohio is $700 billion. So Ohio's a small country. Not even small, it's a reasonably sized country in terms of the size of the output. But you really have to have, these capabilities to keep your great young talent here in state. And Ohio's never lacked for talent, never lacked for educational institutions. It's always been the ability to retain them with great quality jobs.
And that is absolutely one of the reasons, and can't thank Bernie enough for organizing Blockland. I think Mike said earlier, there's not been a lot of tech conferences in the region here, and certainly not many like this with regards to the scale and a focus on a newer technology. You've seen it in other regions where you're placing your hubs. What would be your advice to the community or business leaders here about what else should we be thinking about as we try to change that mantra, try to change it so that our youth do stay here, they graduate, they want to stay here, they're excited about it, and we've got the right technology roles to keep them excited. What any advice that you have for us?
I don't know, the places I've seen are it's viral, right? So if you can create the environment where young people get an opportunity. I mean, the biggest issue, like in the Valley, if you were in the Valley today and both my kids went to school and came back to the Valley to start their careers, and it's amazing what a magnet it is, and it's because it's a viral environment where there's so much infrastructure available to get started, and it isn't just money. It's physical facilities. The fact that I can, most startups when they start up with one thing, they've got idea. And they have no people, they have no money, they have no infrastructure. The opportunity to participate with an office park where I can actually go and meet, it sounds so trivial, but it's so critical. In fact, there's actually a conference room that we can call our headquarters. And the fact that I can get in there and get access to very simple technologies, and now the cloud makes that simple. The fact is before, the opportunity to get access to Java, I had to call and get a license. The fact that I had to get access to any programming language, whether it's Python, whatever it may be, I can now get that off the Oracle cloud, or I can get it off some other cloud, and I could get it's not a lot of cost. So the investment to get some of these environments friendly to a potential startup, if you will, create an accelerator for these companies, is very attractive if you want to keep these kids local.
I think it's a great perspective on some of the things we should consider. I mean, you obviously live in Silicon Valley and that part of the world where startups and that ecosystem around engagement with, like you said, having a place to take an idea, cultivate it, start it, but also have companies that are engaged. Is that an element that we ought to think about differently?
Yeah, we got that advantage where you may not. I mean, like my son-in-law has without getting too detailed into it, my son-in-law's brother decided to start a company. He has no assets. I mean, literally zero. They had an idea for a construction application for contractors in the construction industry.
I'm looking for one of those at Eaton, by the way.
Construction application?
We are.
I might
it's
be able to
something
help
we're
you.
exploring.
But to give you an example, so this was, how do you automate contractors? And it was a big idea, but there were 4 of them. No office, no place. They went to an accelerator downtown San Francisco funded by 3 or 4 companies, of which we're one, and they go down there, and what do they get? They get a room. How much do we charge them for the room? 0. What do they get in addition to the room? They get a handful of computers. And what you do now is you go to our cloud, you can even do this in some others who I won't name, and you'll get startup opportunities that don't cost anything to get started, so that you can get these kids in business pretty quick, compared to what was a lot harder to do in the old days when you had to go to physical sites, get physical assets, you had to get computers and licenses. Now, the barrier to entry is very small. So the opportunity in a town like this, or any town for that matter, that's got the will to do it, to create friendly environments where small groups of people can come together with ideas and give them infrastructure and give them a little help and a little leadership, goes a long, long way.
Super. So do you think we can do that? Are we capable of doing that here? Super. As you think about the technologies, Mark, is there anything else you want to say about how these capabilities have an opportunity to change the way we work or change the way we live? Is there, and how you're thinking?
I think everything. So maybe I didn't do a good job earlier in describing this, but I think, fundamentally, things like AI. I mean, I'll give you an example. When I was, probably a year ago, I was doing a keynote in Europe, and I didn't know at the time. It's a little bit like what Amy Brady did to me here. I didn't know when I was going. I was following Stephen Hawking. And so Stephen Hawking gets up and talks about artificial intelligence. And Hawking goes through this pitch that what's going to happen is, and he goes, this guy after me is going to talk to you about AI, and he's going to talk to you about the computers and these tasks these computers can do. But what's going to happen is these computers are going to get smarter and smarter and smarter. And they will then figure out that the most inefficient thing going on is the humans. And then the computers will eliminate the humans. And then eventually the Earth will end.
Movie. Yep.
And so then I had to get up and talk about SaaS and platform as a service, and it just didn't take,
well.
right? I mean, it was like there was a buzz in the crowd, and then it completely went dead. And as I started going up talking about this stuff, so Keynote, now it's no longer an issue, but I've learned don't follow Hawking, as a Keynote. Now it was a bad move on the handlers' part at Oracle. Anyway, that to me is an extreme. I'm not nearly as negative as he was about it, but AI will. You're going to go to your favorite fast food restaurant here, and there will literally be no humans involved. You will find that most of these restaurants will be completely automated, open 24 hours a day. They'll be able to make food, package food, give you food. You'll be able to check in a hotel. The entire process will be automated. So you're going to see many, many jobs disintermediated by automation. Bad news is Bad news is the jobs will go away. Good news is service levels will actually increase. Convenience will increase as you do it. Now, I believe what I said earlier, that will create a whole new set of jobs.
Right.
And so the ability, that's why I believe most of the jobs, like every technological disintermediation, haven't been created yet. I think this narcissism about that goes on of leaders saying what they're going to do to change everything, and this negativity around it's going to disintermediate all these jobs is just ridiculous. This is going to create more opportunity for decision makers, for people that lead, to programmers that can do things that, frankly, skill sets haven't yet enabled people to do. With the technologies that are coming, are going to be fantastic. So I think everything will change. I think most processes will be touched by this automation, and it's going to be a very exciting time to be in IT.
I agree with you. I think the number of different kinds of roles. If you look at any DOL statistics or any kind of statistics around technology jobs, they just continue to explode. And our challenge is creating enough interest in those kinds of roles and building the right talent.
Well, there's some very negative there's some very negative studies out there about what AI does to the economy. Very negative studies that AI will disintermediate jobs, and that and there's some views that we should slow down the technological view. This is actually the exact wrong thinking. This country, we're talking about Cleveland, but we can even talk in a broader context of the country. This country needs to lead in AI. So just to be very clear, there is a country called China, and they are out-educating the United States right now. They have more. If you don't know the stats, let me make sure you understand them. There are 70,000 engineering majors in the United States. Over 20% of them come from outside the country. Current immigration law has most of those people not staying in the country. Now imagine that. Imagine that you're able to get a slot to go to Stanford. You graduate from Stanford, but we don't allow you to stay in the United States of America. We tell you that you should leave and go start a family, go start a business, go start a company, go pay taxes, go get married, go start a family, go do it somewhere else. But it was okay, you spent 4 years here, 5 years here, 6 years here studying. Now, in China, they out-educate us about 2 to 1 in terms of engineers. They're probably over-educated in terms of their engineering slots that exist today. But most of that education is coming in the context of AI, in machine learning, many of these areas. This country, make sure you're clear. I don't know if anybody reads their 5-year plan. Every couple of years, they write a new 5-year plan. Their 5-year plan in 2025 is to be completely self-sufficient, not importing any technologies from any place. 2025. So their strategy is to lead in this capability that we're talking about right now. The worst thing for this country is to get hooked into some labor disagreement about what's going to. It's to lead. This will create more jobs, while it will disintermediate current jobs, it'll create more opportunity, more jobs than ever before. And this country, frankly, just has to lead. And our technology companies have to lead that leadership.
Got it.
And so Our job is we should be pushing every one of our big technology companies to push as hard, as fast as we can to lead in this area.
Thank you for sharing that. You're passionate around that. It's apparent that you have a very
I think it's a big deal. I think if you want this country, if you want our kids to be part of the same economic strength that we've enjoyed, you have to stay ahead. We have two industries in this country we lead, pharma and tech. That's it. And if you don't lead in pharma and tech, shoving money around, nothing against KeyBank or any bank, but just moving money around is not a discernible, sustainable advantage. So innovation is what that is, and that's why we just have to keep innovating.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it. Hey, hey, we do have some time here, and I think Mark agreed to take some questions from the audience.
Sure.
If you do want to send
or
some
I can go
questions,
away,
in,
or whatever's best for you guys.
If we don't get any, we'll just give up. But it certainly, I'm sure the group probably has some questions for Mark. So, I think the display here, if you can enter your questions, and we'll certainly allow Mark to answer those if you have anything. Okay, we do have some coming in here. All right, here's our first one, Mark, and it is related to blockchain. If you could predict the future, would you say federal, state, or local governments would take the lead in initiative on blockchain? Or none of the above?
Well, listen, I think the government is not good at much, right? So, if you... No, but who wants to raise their hand that thinks, I think the government is extremely innovative? This is ridiculous, right? So in the end,
I see one out there.
Yeah, okay, good for you. I tell you in the end that what happens when government gets involved is government likes to regulate. Regulate actually stifles competition. By the way, let's pretend for a second. Have you heard all the stories about let's regulate Facebook and all of this stuff? Let me tell you who will get the most benefit out of the regulation of Facebook. That would be Facebook. Because the barriers now to go compete with Facebook, given the regulations that are implemented by the government, will actually enhance their advantage. Right? So keeping regulation off these technologies, my opinion, is the best thing. Now, listen, you don't want people cheating, doing bad things. That's not my point at all. I think they can do some of that monitoring. But in the end, what has to be driven is government supporting acceleration of technologies. And maybe that's what the question meant. But if you're talking about the government being involved in the development of, golly, this is just a bad idea. So at the end of the day, what needs to happen is, can the government incent more innovation, R&D tax breaks, et cetera, those certainly could be helpful.
Great. Okay, this is a rather specific one here. What are the top technologies that Oracle offers in the sports and entertainment space? Do you
so we have so we have one of our favorite places, which has been near and dear to people in Cleveland, has been Oracle Arena. Where you all have come to play, and it's a fantastic place. I have a great story for you, and then I'll go into sports and entertainment. It was a year ago. I was sitting in my seat at Oracle Arena, which is on the floor, and this guy, LeBron James, came over me and flew over my head. My seat rolled back, and our new governor-elect, Gavin Newsom, is sitting behind me, and he wound up with LeBron's face right in his face. And so there was a timeout after I got knocked over. This is one of my biggest claims to fame, is getting knocked over by LeBron James. And this was, when it happened, when I got knocked over, he was the nicest guy. He stopped, tried to pick me up, said, "You okay? Really sorry." I thought that was kind. That's my story.
Yeah.
Back to that.
We should have got him an old jersey.
Yeah, no, and by the way, it wasn't long after that I was still rooting, against him, but he seemed like a very nice guy. That's it. So back to sports and entertainment. So we have a hospitality and food and beverage technologies at Oracle that automate most stadiums. So if you went to, soccer stadiums in the UK, football stadiums here in the US, the ability to automate concessions, the ability to do all that, that's technologies that we offer. Sometimes those are integrated with hotel applications. So all of that sort of sports, entertainment, food and beverage capability, more times than not, is I say more times than not, we've probably got 50-60% market share in the sports stadium automation process.
Great. Here's an interesting question around, again, education. What advice do you have for high schoolers entering this rapidly changing industry of tech? Internships, ? Certain majors they should think about? Again, given the way you think about talent and Oracle and how you're building that talent, what is your advice to high schoolers?
Well, as I told you, we hire a lot from the campus. I think we'll continue that for a while. I mean, the question inherent in it is what's going to happen with higher ed. Higher ed's you talk about difficult business model. Higher ed's a very difficult business model right now. Will higher ed institutions continue to flourish? I'll assume for the sake of this, I'll keep that variable constant. I think there's an enormous need for STEM capability. And that science technology background is critical. I told you what I think's happening with our most biggest competitor to the United States, technically, and I think there are not enough engineers in this country to fill all the job opportunities. So there's probably, and you're seeing many of the big companies put hubs outside the United States because they're locating hubs where the talent is. So as a result, I think you'll see more jobs in the U.S. if there are more graduates that are capable of filling those jobs. So I still think STEM is an amazing opportunity for young people in this country. And given what I told you about what's going to happen with AI, chatbots, blockchains, digitalists, all of this, there's going to be opportunities beyond belief in terms of data science analytics and capabilities over the next decade or two.
Great. Thank you, Mark. A couple specific blockchain questions. I mean, clearly one of the attributes of blockchain is this element of trust and the way it builds trust into the network and the capabilities. Do you see any specific security concerns or threats surrounding those technologies? Is that something that's come up at Oracle, or thinking about that as a particular technology?
Well, we live with it every day.
Tell us about security overall.
Well, I'm sure you all read about all the cybersecurity threats that are out there. I'm here to tell you they're very real. Most of the applications that are out there today, just to give you some context, are, as I said earlier, old. Most are not encrypted. And have you ever heard of this term? I don't know how technical this group is, but this term called patching. Does this mean anything to you, patching? Here's what a patch is. You find a vulnerability in a piece of software. And it's just like patching a tire. I say, I find this vulnerability, I'm going to patch the vulnerability. So the originator of the software puts the patch out and then puts it on a website, and then everybody can then take advantage and download the patch. Have you heard of this thing called Equifax? Equifax, right. So Equifax. What happened at Equifax, right? Poor guy CEO gets called in front of the U.S. Congress. Says, you guys are stupid, you're incapable. How did anybody steal this data? I can tell you exactly how it happened. They had a tool called Apache Struts, a piece of open source software. And it had a thing called a patch. It's and the patch typically takes most customers 8-9 months to get the patch available to deploying the patch. I could explain it to you in a lot of detail, but just trust me, it takes that long. And it's because it's complicated. Most people can't get the patch deployed. When you look at the bad guys who are trying to hack, what do the bad guys do? They actually know every patch that's available in the marketplace. They actually know how long it takes to get patched. They actually know what tool it is and how long it takes to get patched. And guess who they attack? Those people. And so as a result, almost everybody who you work for is extremely vulnerable. This patching issue is at the top of Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase. These are extremely, again, these people have hundreds of configurations, hundreds and hundreds of tools, many of whom all have vulnerabilities that are being exploited by the bad guys. Blockchain is actually a way to help improve that. So if you can start to secure, as you go, by the way, into the cloud, almost assuredly, I shouldn't say almost assuredly, assuredly, that any of the big enterprise cloud companies are going to have better security than any individual company could ever have. Just to give you one simple example, every piece of data in the Oracle Cloud is encrypted. Encrypted, meaning we don't even see your data. All we see is a bunch of encrypted files, and it stays encrypted all the way at rest, all the way across the network. Now, I can give you 100 other security things going, but blockchain is another methodology for keeping a transaction secure across multiple environments. So as you get these networks, these blockchain networks built that are highly secure, it actually is another piece, I think, of as it becomes another feature inside apps, of a broad set of security issues that will help secure data. And I think this is, in the end, another one of these big issues that will come up. This security problem isn't going to get reduced, it's going to go up. We still have not had a major cataclysmic security event in this country. I hardly call Equifax a cataclysmic event. There will be one, assuredly. And by the way, most of the doors to the very valuable places are not locked. Most of them are actually open. And they know where the vulnerabilities are. I don't say this to scare you, but I say this to be very frank with you. As this movement moves to more of these enterprise clouds, I actually believe we get more secure, not less secure. But this will take a while. But I think a blockchain is part of many initiatives that will help secure.
I don't disagree. I think your perspective is right on in that the basic hygiene, given the set of legacy applications that a company like mine or others have, this idea of keeping the consistent patch levels across a myriad of environments and balancing that kind of operational work with investment in technologies like blockchain or AI probably does push us more towards leveraging third parties in the cloud simply because we can move faster.
Well, Bill, I mean, think about it. How could you ever possibly do it?
It's very difficult.
How many? Do you have a Dell server at Eaton?
We have roughly 6,500 servers in our company.
How many different brands do you have?
Well, we're actually pretty standard on HP brands.
How many operating systems do you have?
You name it, we have it. Mainframe, AS400, Linux, we have them all.
Yeah.
Windows, we have everything imaginable.
How many
varying versions, by the way. So you're right, it's a very...
How many databases do you have?
I don't know that, probably thousands. Thousands.
And how many different brands? You've got Oracle.
Well, we do. We
but
have
you
them
have different
all.
versions of Oracle.
Different versions of
the
SQL.
Reason if you ask me why I'm doing this inquisition,
it's exactly what you would expect.
Yeah.
You know the answers. You're already
I do know the answers because it's a leading question. Let me tell you how many configurations we have in our cloud. One. One computer, one operating system, one version of the database. Our ability to secure our environment is however many times easier than what Bill just described. Because what's happened is democracy has occurred in IT. All the servers, all these operating systems, all these databases, all these database versions. And if you ask this poor Equifax guy, remember when I always love when these Congress people are up there going, "Hey, what's wrong with you? How come you couldn't patch? Well, you're an idiot." And I'm like, well, I'm running. I'll tell you why it didn't work is because it's really hard. And I mean, it's sort of like
there's thousands of them.
It's sort of like I read this stuff. I mean, I don't know do you ever read the Wall Street Journal article about Elon Musk and the guy who wrote this article said Elon Musk is an idiot. And I thought to myself, well, last time I checked, this guy's landing rockets on sort of movable landing pads in the Pacific Ocean, and he's an idiot. And you're behind a Mac. Typing. So this stuff. Well, I mean, I don't mean that, but I just don't think he's an idiot, right? I mean, this is like landing rockets in the Pacific on reusable landing pads seems hard to me. I mean, do you do that?
No, it's not something
and by the way,
I've done.
he does that in his spare time.
Life, right?
He's doing cars. He's doing these electric car
he's got a real
things, right?
job too.
So this is really hard, but he's an idiot, right? And the guy writing the article is a genius. It's the same way with these guys of, listen, you guys need to patch this stuff. I can tell you why, because of what Bill said. It's really hard. So it takes years to standardize these environments to secure them, and that's part of what we just have to get done.
Right. Another, swinging back over to blockchain, are you doing anything with small development companies in your ecosystem at Oracle? How do you think about this partnership between what maybe some of the startups and the Oracle organization and working together on some of the new capabilities such as blockchain?
Well, it's exactly what I said. Just make it easy. So we try to make our technologies available to startups for free.
Yeah.
Get started, make it easy, put an accelerator in place that they can. It used to be in the old days you couldn't build on Oracle technologies because it was too expensive. You had to buy a license, you had no money, and we didn't have availability of the cloud. The cloud's changed all of that. So now you get the opportunity to use, you can use Java, Linux, the Oracle database. By the way, I think the same way you can do with now with Microsoft, right? They've got .NET, we've got Linux, they've got Windows, we've got Java, they've got .NET. We like our hand better than theirs, but their stuff's okay too. But you can now do the same thing there. So now startups have an opportunity they've never had before.
Super. Another kind of an education question. You mentioned attributes for new talent acquisition. Can you be a little more specific on what you look for when you're recruiting, or what does Oracle look for? Is it engineering, computer science, business, and would it even be feasible to recommend some type of computer science education for everyone, given what you said earlier about where the new jobs are being created and those that are likely to go away?
Yeah, so we try very hard to look for this characteristic of smart, capable people. And we don't find that somebody who made a decision, our data tells us that somebody who made a decision as a sophomore what to major in doesn't necessarily determine their ability to be a success at Oracle. Now, if the data told us something different, we do something different. But so we don't typically say, you have to be a business major or we won't hire you into our sales organization, or you have to be a discrete computer science major and not an electrical engineering major, therefore we won't hire you into development. So we tend to look for capable, smart people. We have another set of characteristics, which, by the way, one that's very, very strong is extracurricular activities. So we find, for example, in sales, that people that have had strong extracurricular activities tend to be very successful. Those that have had to deal with time management and discipline and other issues tend to be a very strong correlation towards eventual success.
Super. Maybe one kind of different kind of question, and we'll go ahead and wrap it up here. Any book recommendations given the landscape and the kinds of things that are happening out there today? Anything that you see that we ought to be thinking about as leaders? And
I don't recommend books usually. I just I read books, and I find most books, some part of the book I disagree with, and some part of the book I like, and so I take parts. I mean, one book that I probably nodded my head to over the years more than I didn't was a book by a guy named Jim Collins that was Good to Great. Yep. And it was really how you build a company and the momentum a company builds. And I found myself, when I got finished with the book, saying, I like this book. I agreed with almost everything. Almost every other book I read something and I'm like, yeah, I don't agree with that, even though even though I like that. And so I sort of try not to recommend books, because when I do, somebody reads it and says, that was a terrible book. What an idiot. Sort of like that guy who wrote that article about Elon Musk, right? Who's like, anyway, sorry, couldn't help myself.
Super.
I'm still riveted by a guy that can land rockets in an ocean.
And he's an idiot.
He's an idiot.
He's an idiot.
He's an idiot.
Yeah.
He's just not capable.
Awesome. Super. Thanks you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thanks a lot.